We've got a framework that we use called HOLO, which stands for Humans, Organization, Landscape, and Objectives. And those are the design workshops that we go through with our clients in the think phase. And we do not move forward on any design until we have a proper product requirements document that covers everything. We took a step back and said, okay, we're going to actually force some time and a little bit of due diligence onto clients, which will help facilitate in the early stage so that we're not moving forward on anything until the strategy and the architecture and everything has been created.
Welcome to the CTRL ALT GAB podcast, where we sit down with tech founders to break down how they scale, pivot, and grow. I'm your host, Gabrielle Walthers. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the CTRL ALT GAB podcast. Today, we are joined by the wonderful Marcello Gortana from Tennis. He is one of their founders, and we are very excited to chat with him today about all things tennis, not the sport, although maybe the sport, and dive into what tennis is all about, Marcello and his scaling journey. So thank you, Marcello, for joining us today. We're so grateful to have you. And
Sounds great. Yeah. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Of course. We are so happy to have you. I want to talk about what tennis's origin story is. I want to know why you named it tennis. I want to know what led you to be in the space that you're in.
For sure. So it's a bit of a long story. I'll try to make it as succinct as possible. So I did a Bachelor of Technology in university. I was always interested in web and design. I worked in the print industry for a while. I was managing print campaigns across retail stores for Nike and a lingerie brand. I was always interested in starting my own thing pretty much my whole life. And I was very passionate about travel, actually, and surfing and the travel industry. One day I learned that you could surf on the lakes here in Ontario, and I started surfing on the lakes. And on one of my first days out, I met my business partner, Simon, and another partner of ours at the time. His name was Antonio. And we actually started a surf travel company. So we were running a surf travel company for a couple of years. We're spending a lot of time in Costa Rica. At the same time, we were also doing design and brand identity, print design services basically for companies. And one of our first clients was a hospital for sick children. So every now and then we would do a project for them. And all of this was out of necessity because we were running two businesses. I was working in telecom when we all met. As we were building up these businesses, I would work my 9 to 5 and I would go over to an office that we had on Spadina and I would work there from like 6 till 12. And I did that every day for a year. By the end of a year, I was like, okay, things are growing, things are happening, but I just can't continue doing this, right? So I migrated over to what is now Tennis and was also a surf travel company at one point. And we were running both little businesses and enterprises for a while and making a little bit of money. So things were starting to pick up on the digital side. And, I was looking at the work we were doing and the clients we were working with. And I was like, there's a huge opportunity on the UX and development side of the world and professional services. And I was learning more and more about the travel side. And there was a lot about it that I was getting a little bit disillusioned by. Eventually, I just made the decision to part ways with the surf travel company and our partner there, our shares. And then Simon and I continued with what is now Tennis. Was also Collective at one point and then rebranded into Tennis. And 12 years ago, we set a direction. We were doing a lot more brand identity, print design, more creative back then, but we had set this direction that we wanted to be fully in digital as the long-term milestone. And we are there now.
Very cool. I did not expect the surf industry to be such a critical pillar to your origin story.
Yeah.
I'm curious what, beyond just your interests and experience, was there anything else that a surf travel company and the design world? Like, was there any other parallels between that beyond just your personal interest and what you had experience in?
I mean, really, although the fact that we all came from a design background really helped to position the travel company. And it was a lot of fun just thinking about design and brand and stuff for a travel company like the one that we had started. It's still around, by the way. It's called Surf the Greats. It's more on leaning towards online retail now since we split ways over a decade ago. It was just fun to work on a consumer facing brand and digital experience. And I think it was at the time, a lot of the digital experiences in the travel space or the tour space were not that great in my opinion. And so it was kind of fun to be like, okay, well, we can really make a really big change here. So that's about it, I think.
Cool. And it sounds like beyond the evolution from a two-pronged company, changing names,
Yeah.
shifting.
It was like having two babies basically at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah, having twins with very different
It was
personalities.
nuts.
And how did those pivots impact health of in the growth of your company? Did that propose any challenges? Was there opportunities that were birthed out of that? Because those are very interesting shifts that a lot of companies that end up in the industry that tennis is in don't go through that type of life cycle. So I'm curious what that looked like.
Yeah, all of that and the many pivots we have made since then have been a big lesson for me. I would say that we've only really been super focused in the last 4 or 5 years, and we've been at it as entrepreneurs for like 10 to 12. And it took me a long time to just learn focus and patience. I would say I'm still not great at it, but I'm miles ahead of where I was. We had the surf travel business and what was a small creative studio, and obviously it was impossible. It's very difficult to run two different businesses that are completely different models. I was jumping between both because I was running the business side of it. And then my business partner, Simon, is a design director for us at Tennis. And so he was really deep into the production. He had some focus. I was jumping around a lot. Yeah, we made that shift and it immediately gave us a bit of clarity. I don't think we learned anything really from the first shift because we then down the road started seeing some opportunity in experiential. And so we dove pretty headfirst into experiential before the pandemic, and we were doing really well at it. We had some really great clients in our first year, clients like Accenture, Staples Canada, and our experiential was really about combining UX and development and physical structures. So working with fabricators and industrial designers to create these installations that people could launch at their conferences. All of it was always custom, always heavy on digital interaction, and it was so fun, so amazing. But every time we did one of those projects, it almost derailed the entire business because it would basically take 150% focus on that project for 3 months, and you did not have time to do anything else. So we went through that process again, and we were like, we really want to do this, but we can't yet. We need to focus. We spread ourselves a little bit too thin at one point, getting in too far into development without really nailing our UX process. And so we scaled that back and basically set in a direction where we're only going to do UX design. And we've been doing that for quite a few years now. It's really, really helped to just become a specialist, or further specialize, I should say. I get really excited about starting things and getting into new projects and building from scratch. I really like that. It's probably a gift and a curse because I constantly want to do this stuff, but I've really learned to restrain myself a little bit more lately because the focus is so important. Someone once gave me a really good analogy, and it was a mentor of mine, and he was describing it like there's a gardener really good at their job and there's a lot of opportunity, but then one customer asks, can you do the eaves troughs? And the person's like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? Like, you're the same customer, but now you need different equipment, different processes. You need to get a ladder. You need to get all sorts of different tools. You need to maybe do some learning to understand what you actually need to do to make sure that you're helping solve this problem. And it's just such a different process that it can hurt what you're good at. Constantly remind myself that we are more like the gardener than the all-purpose handyman.
Yeah, I love a good analogy. I have a bad track record on the show for trying to whip out these figures of speech and sayings and butchering them horrifically, but I actually think I know this one. Something like a master of everything is an expert in nothing type thing.
Yes.
And I think especially with founders that love to be on the front end and the building from the ground up stage, like yourself, get themselves in pickles sometimes where they like to create so much that they overcreate and then find themselves in this place where they're spreading themselves too thin. They're going after too many markets. They're having too diverse of an offering, and then they're not really able to scale up anything because they're dipping their toes in a bunch of different areas.
Totally.
I am imagining you can probably speak to that experience as well, just by the nature of trying to run those two companies and working two full-time jobs at the exact same time.
Yeah, totally.
Beyond the lesson of you can't do everything all the time and be able to put 100% to everything, what are kind of some other big takeaways that has, had some positive impacts for what you've been doing so far and basically from then to now?
First of all, you mentioned some stuff that we're still guilty of. Being too broad in our target market and the companies that we work with is difficult because it's hard to consolidate messaging. It's hard to communicate problem solving when you're approaching too many industries, which we do. And we work with a lot of different industries. We have some concentration. And I think for 2026, one of my goals is to really start focusing in on a few industries that we've been successful in. But it's hard for me because I also believe that what we do in the the UX design and development space is not industry specific. A lot of companies in all sorts of industries are facing the same problems, but it does get easier when it comes to marketing and sales to just like narrow down your focus and really speak specifically to the people that you're targeting. So that's something we'll probably change in the future. I think of some of the other functions within the business, like sales and marketing, or things that I don't have that much experience in building sales processes, building marketing processes. I've never done that in the past. When we talk about being too broad, I think about like how long it's taken me to get good at something that I'm a beginner at. So like sales processes and marketing and stuff like that. We probably spent 2-3 years trying to figure out like what our overall sales strategy was going to be within the organization. We tried many different things. We have gone through many different iterations of what is the ICP? What is the messaging? If you think about a task like sales, for instance, or marketing, which is a business function, how long it takes to just get efficient and good. And then you think about the UX design, consulting, design, development, and then all the additional services the clients need, like accessibility support, optimization. It's never ending how far you can specialize. And whenever you aren't doing that, you're just losing time. And I'm always wary at one point, and it's still pretty popular with larger organizations, but at one point it was popular to be everything in the web and UX space. You did everything. You did SEO, you did web, you did all of this stuff. But like when I hear that now, I'm kind of wary. I understand how it works in the huge agencies in the world that have a lot of funding and a lot of people, because people can specialize within the organization in services and you can have teams that are specialists. But beyond, like below those really big behemoth organizations, I'm always like, how are you actually good at all of these things? You probably have one really strong capability and then the other you're okay at. And I think the world's changing. It's becoming more about specialists and less about generalists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're right. There's a big shift because a lot of people want to add on more use cases and diversify their offering. But they take the success of the first use case and they almost give themselves a false sense of confidence. And they're like, well, this is singing, so we can add this on. It's going to be completely fine. And not understanding that the same level of care and attention and specificity needs to be applied to everything you do. And the success of your first offering isn't just going to automatically roll down, impact everything you do. And I think that's an interesting shift that you brought up, how people used to be much more drawn to that one window approach where they can have one point of reference and one contact or one connection that's going to be able to provide all of this to them. But you're exactly right. That's shifting massively. And I think a lot of people have noticed this in strategic partnerships where they're like, okay, this is great. We're going to partner with this person, this company, and they're going to do all of these things for me. That's amazing. And then you'd only learn after you've spent X amount of money and wasted a bunch of time that you'd be better off to either niche down your partnership or take some of it on yourself, or
like in the big agency model, like it's outsourced. It's everything that they're not proficient at is just outsourced to another agency. So you're paying a markup for that.
Yeah.
The model is not appealing to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Super fair. I think a lot of people would echo that. I think that it's really just speaking to an outdated model that is just now pushed out for good reason. But
there's also the quality of life side of it. So that I think about often. It's as entrepreneurs, it's extremely stressful at times. There's a lot of waves of emotions and challenges and internal analysis of whether you're good enough or all of the things that come along with going out on your own. And sometimes, the wrong partner or the wrong strategic decision actually has a worse effect on you personally than the business.
Yeah.
So making those decisions from a personal peace of mind perspective is great too. So I could tell you, like for those experiential projects, we did a really amazing one for Accenture. It's on our website, the case studies there. It's probably my favorite project that we've ever done. It's just so cool. And we launched it in Montreal, Calgary, Toronto, Vancouver, and then the US. And part of it involved like a giant installation that was fabricated out of steel that we could set up, break down. We were doing real-time analytics. So basically when you came in, you got a name tag. We had some tech in there that we were tracking where you were moving and presenting all that data across the conferences. And then you could go and put your badge in a kiosk, and this huge structure and screen would tell you like how you've been experiencing the conference, who you've been closest with. Super fun, super inspiring, just an absolute, I don't even know how to describe the little amount of sleep that we got over the 2 weeks that we were actually putting on the events and the experience at conferences. We did the entire thing in 3 months from ideation to execution. In those 2 weeks, we were also shipping these structures from province to province, and then like midway between provinces, transferring from one delivery company to another delivery company. It was just insanity. And it was magic, but it was everything, literally everything. The logistics, Accenture supported a lot with that because they have their own partnerships with the logistics companies. But we get the deliveries in Vancouver in crates, have to figure out how to get them up to a 30-second office floor, look at the floor plans, make sure we knew where we were setting everything up, break it down at like 3 o'clock in the morning, ship it out by 5 a.m. And then 2 or 3 days later, we were doing it in Montreal. And then 2 days or 3 days later, we were doing it in Toronto, and then troubleshooting, supporting it while we were doing it. It was awesome, but wasn't our business. Like that's a whole separate entity that we could start up at some point with its own staffing and support. We were just making it happen with 3 people, 4 people. And it was really hard. And I would never want to do that regularly because it's just not sustainable. So as soon as that project ended and we could just focus again, it was like a relief.
I'm curious because that's a very big experience. And I think specifically with something that takes up so much of your time and requires that level of buy-in where ultimately your life goes on pause and that's your entire existence for the time it needs to be. What lessons did you learn from that beyond just, don't bite off more than you can chew, that has led you to influencing how you make choices and how you take things on with tennis now?
One of the things that we learned from that was, again, because it wasn't our core practice at the time, we had not invested the time in figuring out the process. And we have a process that's pretty solid with our UX practice, but we take it and apply it to all creative work that we do. But we didn't really in this instance because it was maybe our 3rd or 4th experiential project. We were still like learning how to even produce this stuff from a business model, because it requires so many different vendors. One of the things that we did learn from there was that, I mean, we've always had a huge value on process, but when it came to projects like this where you have to ideate and fabricate, we learned, and especially in the event world, it seems like most people that are making decisions around events and experiential are thinking on like a 3-month timeline, which is not enough time. So we started to revise our process a little bit and basically force clients to take more time to think, which is very similar to what we did with tennis. We recognized very early on in the UX and development space that we saw a trend. We would start working with a client and then start to realize that they haven't got it all figured out. And so we were doing too much thinking and doing at the same time. And that was affecting everything: efficiency, how long projects took, client experience, all of that stuff. So we took a step back and said, okay, well, we're not sure that clients really know what they want or really know what the problem is. They know what the symptoms are, but they don't always know what the problem is. And they don't always know what the inputs are that we need in order to create good outputs. And so we basically created a process that forces them to take some time to think. We actually called it our think phase, but it's basically like a discovery. We've got a framework that we use called HOLO, which stands for Humans, Organization, Landscape, and Objectives. And those are the design workshops that we go through with our clients in the think phase. And we do not move forward on any design until we have a proper product requirements document that covers everything from like, what are the organizational goals here? What are all the tiers of humans with internal and external users? What are the priorities? What does the landscape look like in this space or this product that you're trying to build? Like, what does the competitive market look like? What are the workflows that we're trying to support? All of these things that we noticed in the past when we would start working, we were trying to figure this out with clients while designing. So we just took a step back and said like, okay, we're going to actually force some time and force a little bit of due diligence onto clients, which will help facilitate in the early stage so that we're not moving forward on anything until the strategy and the architecture and everything has been created. And we took the same approach with the experiential. It was like, listen, we don't know how much it's going to cost to produce this thing because we don't even have an idea at this stage. So we really need to allot this amount of time to ideation. And if you can't commit to something within this amount of time, then we are not doing production. You can keep the ideation document and you can apply those ideas wherever you want. Maybe it's for next year's event or whatever. But if we don't get through this phase and you don't narrow down what you're actually interested in and we don't come up with a accurate scope of work by this amount of time, then we're just not doing the project because it's way too risky.
Yeah, that's an important piece too of almost infusing a framework in the early stages where leads are able to kind of qualify themselves, where you can be like, for us to be effective, you have to have certain things in place on your side to have this be a good fit.
Yeah.
That's something that through these conversations, a lot of founders, especially when they're just launching a product or trying to implement a new use case, they're very quick to get people onboarded and people using it and get everything live. But if you open the gates to people that don't have the internal infrastructure to support, or they're not equipped internally to really handle the solution that they're trying to get, then it's bad for everybody. And
Yeah.
we've seen that on our end too. People think that they're ready for a lot more than oftentimes they actually are. Having those steps where it's like, no, we need these things from you, because not only does that make us able to do our job, but it also allows us to know that this actually is going to be effective for you. And so neither one of us is wasting our time or money.
Mm-hmm.
Is really actually quite important.
Yeah. Pre-qualifying is important for sure.
Yeah. And where you have gone through niching down and making sure you're a bit more intentional and narrow with who you're going after, where did you land on that? What is your current conceptualization of your ideal customer? Another part of that question is that still evolving? And are you still in that place where you're trying to figure that out?
There's two areas that we've kind of niched down. One is like ourselves as an organization. Years ago, we were positioning ourselves as full service, and we actually decided we don't want to do dev in-house. We don't want to manage developers' processes. We don't really want to get into support. It's a very different business model. And this was a long time ago. That gave us many years of being able to just focus on UX design and the process and just being excellent at that, and partnering with people who only focus on development and they're excellent at that. And we actually had one partner, and then we integrated a little bit and it worked quite well. But we're at a point now where we feel like we want to start getting back into more of a full service model, mainly because I think it's really difficult to maintain control between design and development and maintain the vision and the solutioning and design across development if you don't have it in-house. It's not impossible. It's just harder. We're exploring a little bit of a new model, and we don't have it figured out yet. It's in process, but we're trying to figure out, what is that role that we want to bring on in-house. We don't want to build a full dev team, but we want to have some senior leadership in-house. It's in evolution at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
From the client perspective, we don't have an industry concentration, which we probably will in 2026. I'm saying probably because I'm not 100% sure if that's the direction that I want to take yet. It's still trying to figure that out. I'll tell you what the driver is of this idea is that I'm probably going to hire another sales rep in 2026. And so I started thinking about, we have a sales rep right now, an account executive, and I'm starting to think like, how do you segment multiple sales reps? And there's too few to think geographically, because that doesn't really work when you have two sales reps. That's not really necessary. So my gut is that the best way to segment sales account executives or sales reps is industry based, so that they can really specialize in an industry. I'm leaning towards segmenting, looking at all of our data over the last probably 3 years and pulling out those clients that we really love, segmenting all of them into industries, and then focusing on the 4 or 5, maybe 10 that we really, really love, and trying to see what the trends are in the industries there and maybe segmenting them based on those industries. But generally, we work really well with businesses in enterprise, and then that's kind of like our primary audience. And then secondary would be 100 to 500 employees typically. It doesn't mean that we won't work with anything smaller than that. We actually do work with a lot of nonprofits and associations that are typically smaller in employee size, but have similar budgets.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some there's some overlap. Same with startups and like the VC world. We do some work with them as well. We got a few clients there and they work really well with us. So there's a couple variables that we kind of look at, but that's generally what we're looking at.
Yeah. And with having a plan for niching down industry, knowing the size that you typically want to go after, but not being restrictive to that, how does it impact you and your team operationally working with these smaller companies versus working for big enterprise companies? Because I can imagine, just from what I've experienced.
Controversial.
Yeah, like that's a big difference in just project management, how things roll out.
Yeah.
The levels of approvals and feedback and really everything I can think of would be very different from those two sizes. So I'm curious how that looks for you guys.
So we love the enterprise level. And I'm saying in this example, enterprise is like anything over 500 employees. We don't have too many on the enterprise space. We want to grow in that space. It takes a long time to build that relationship, build that trust, and get an opportunity in that sort of like enterprise space. So it does take a long time. I really enjoy the enterprise clients that we work with. There's a level of sophistication that they bring and experience that not just with design and technology, but just working with external vendors, that just makes the process really great. Similar to the 100 to 500 employee range, there's a level of sophistication and experience that they bring to the table, and internal expertise and knowledge that they bring to the table that make it really awesome to work with them. The client base that we sometimes have trouble with is the below 50. And I find them quite challenging to work with at times. Again, this is not all companies, because we do have some companies that we work with in that size that are fine. But I'll say we do a lot more due diligence on companies below this, like 50 employee count, to make sure that they're going to be a good fit, because I just find that it can be much more challenging. They don't have the obstacles of complicated purchasing hierarchies and stakeholder groups and approvals and all that. But I find that they're quite challenging just to manage.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing you bring up, because it's like, what battle do you want to fight? Is it the long sales cycle, or is it the once they're onboarded challenge and kind of that unfocused, eager, smaller company that could be doing great work, but...
And I get it. We're a small company, founder-led organization. I totally understand why sometimes it's just a bit more difficult to manage those clients.
Yeah, but I think too, through this discussion, it points out the value in niching down to size specifications as well, because then you know who your enemy is. If it's the long sales cycle, then that can be implemented and taken into consideration when you're developing sales campaigns and strategy with regards to cold outbound or anything really. But if you're trying to fight both battles at once, that's a much harder. To complete.
And employee size is just the easiest thing to filter too, right?
Yeah.
There's a whole range of things that we look at that are like ideal clients, but just to bring it down to the simplest ingredient, it's, how big is the organization, basically.
Yeah. That's an easy filter to apply for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. I know you mentioned the strategy in relation to sales and marketing is something that you're moving into developing out here shortly. With that, is there going to be a decided focus and a lens on getting in front of that enterprise level? Is that going to be infused in your strategy at that level? Or is it something that, okay, sweet.
Yeah, it always has been. We have like the ideal ICP, like a tier 1 and a tier 2. And from a sales strategy, a sales execution perspective, when we have our sales reps doing any outbound or anything like that, the first thing I want them to do is basically filter. Okay, you had a great conversation with this client. That's awesome. As a cold call or whatever, you've got some really good engagement. You're having some really great discussions around what their environment looks like, solutioning. Have you answered the question of whether it's a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3? Because if you've had one good discussion and then you're struggling to get any sort of follow-up in place and it's a 40 employee company, I would say don't bother continuing.
Yeah.
Or just turn down the effort. If it's a great discussion and it's a tier 1, it means to me like, okay, there's a lot more opportunity to network and connect throughout the organization with other people and start to just build a little bit of a relationship and build some trust there and, present us as an option when an opportunity comes up.
Yeah, definitely. And we're coming up on the end here, but I do want to ask, from zero to present, there's been a lot of change. And I can tell based on, how you talk about the future that there's going to be some change coming down the pipe as well. And so looking to the future, what is the next benchmark or metric you're looking to hit? And as specific as you can be, what's your plan of attack beyond expanding and hiring and stuff to get there? And what does that next level look like for you guys? Yeah,
there's lots of levels, obviously, to get to whatever the BHAG is. I look at companies like Conrad Group, Wrangle, Fantasy. I look at those organizations as like the North Star in terms of what's possible. Conrad Group is a $100 million company founded by, two guys that started out of university. I don't know how we're going to get there. I have a strong leaning towards like some sort of acquisition strategy once we get to a certain size and starting to bring on some potential smaller agencies into the tennis ecosystem. That's my ideal world. When that could happen, I'm not sure yet, but I also want to be Canada wide. We've got quite a few clients here and we're really focusing a lot on Canada at the moment. I would say the US is starting to become more viable for us in terms of client expansion and acquisition and stuff like that. But we have got a big focus at the moment on just expanding as far as we can within Canada and then slowly also including and trying to expand into the US. Maybe not physically, but maybe physically. I'm not sure yet. And yeah, just starting to look at what acquisitions would look like. I think that's probably the most realistic way of just scaling, continuing to scale as quickly as possible. So those are just a bunch of ideas that I'm like consistently thinking about as we grow and scale the business.
Yeah, it's good to have, even if they seem far in the future or lofty, or to have those on your vision board in the back of your mind to just
Yeah, for sure.
unify really everything that you do, even if it's just subconsciously. I think
Yeah.
that from starting with Freshly, Ashley, our CEO, is so about mindfulness and talks about how important it is to be aligned as a person so you're able to move through life and move through all these challenges in a way that's going to bring you closer to your goal. And I think that that's a really soft qualitative approach that's hard to measure. And so a lot of people go, how important is that really? But I think that being able to
It's
critical.
hugely important.
Yeah.
What's the saying? What isn't measured doesn't get managed or something? What's measured gets managed? Something
I
like
like
that.
it. I've never heard it before, but I like it. I think it's correct. Yeah.
It's a good thing for everyone to remember because
Yeah.
as you start expanding, you start hiring people and you start hiring. If there's a problem within your business you don't have an answer to, the first question should be like, how are we measuring it? Like, what is the data? Because if you're not measuring anything, then you're not able to manage it. And I think it's the same with,
I think it's the same
with your BHAG. Like, get as explicit as possible because how are you tracking whether you're moving in the right direction if you don't have anything that you're measuring or tracking against, right? So
yeah,
kind of critical.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's something to be said about just continuing to do what you do and not having a BHAG. That's probably pretty fulfilling too for some people.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there's a million different types of people out there. I'm sure there's someone.
Yeah, it's maybe a bit less stressful.
Yeah, I'm sure those people go through life and life is just so happy and easy. But yeah, especially in these discussions with founders specifically, it's so clear to see who recognizes how personal being a founder is, and then the folks that really externalize their role as a founder of their company. And if you fail to acknowledge that personal element, you're setting yourself up as a person for struggle and being aligned on your goal for both yourself and for the health and the success of your company is hard to do. And it's hard to wrap your head around and recognize the importance. But I think that it's critical. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. The personal side of it is really important. I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably maybe don't dedicate the time for that. I know I don't at the moment, but
well, it's hard to, especially when you're wearing a billion hats and you're in the scale up side and you're like, okay, well, both I'm the founder and the CEO, but I'm also the sales rep and I'm also the CTO and I'm also the people officer and I'm also all these other things. It's hard to be like, and I'm also a person outside of this, and I need to pay equal attention to all of those parts, and eventually you're going to run out of stuff to give. So
I have two really young kids too, and I think that's probably partly why focus has just started to come naturally to me, because I literally do not have any time. I've got a 9-month-old and a 3-year-old, and it is so hard to do everything that's required in an entire day.
Yeah, it would be hard enough to do that. 1 hour. Yeah, like it would be hard enough to do that without having a family or without having. Oh my gosh,
it's totally, exactly. The Accenture example was like, I don't even think I was dating at the time. I was literally just a single guy with all the time in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you think you're busy then, and then life comes at you.
Exactly.
And you have a wife and a kid or kids, and you're like, cool. Well, I thought I had no time before. Boy, was I ever wrong.
That wouldn't have even been possible at this stage of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, the timing of all of those pieces. My partner's brother and sister just had a baby as well. And we were up there just helping. And neither one of them are a founder. Neither one of them are a CEO. Neither one of them have a job where they have to be working 15 hours a day. And it's still such a challenge and such a time suck. And like, I really have all of the admiration in the world for not only parents, but parents that are able to take on big, complex projects of their own doing and make them successful. So kudos to you for that, because good Lord, that's a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, some days
and I think
it seems
also
impossible.
is another example of how critical it is to recognize yourself as a founder in all of the areas that you are one, and that includes being a person and a father and a husband and all of those pieces too. And failure to treat yourself as an entire being, I think, really is just a disservice. So not to get so philosophic with it, but I do think that's a really important part. And so
and if you haven't figured out like process and stuff by the time,
it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to do at that stage.
You really have like a period of time there where you're kind of like need your team as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, we're coming up on the end here, and I just want to give this last minute for you to tell folks where to find you, if there's anything they should look for in the coming weeks or months or years or whatever. Maybe not
Sweet.
years. I don't know if the attention span is going to be that long, but let us know where to find you. Let us know if there's something coming down the pipe we should take a look at.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my website is www.designtennis.com. And I also just generally like connecting with people on LinkedIn. So we actually do quite a bit of content as well, and just like content thinking around design. What is design? What's the process? Like, how does this stuff all work? Just because my business partner and I enjoy thinking about that stuff. So we have a YouTube channel as well. And we got a bunch of content on there too. So those are the primary places, but I've been really enjoying LinkedIn lately. We've started getting a little bit more serious about content marketing, and it's actually started to create some really great discussions and expand my network there, so that it's starting to feel a little bit more like a community than just a place where you do outreach. So I've been really enjoying LinkedIn, and I'm always available on there.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here, you guys. Find Marcello on LinkedIn. Take a look at Design Tennis website. Reach out to him if you have any questions, or if you have use case for tennis, and find him, talk to him about all the things. Follow along for the show too. Follow us on our YouTube, follow us on Instagram, everywhere, freshlypressed.ca. And thank you again, Marcello, for joining us today. It was so great to speak with you. I hope you had a ton of fun. And
yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Awesome. And we'll catch you guys next time. All right.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the CTRL ALT GAB podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one.